Oh, g'day, it's Stu Mac here. I want to talk with you a little bit about mindfulness. We've talked a little bit about mindfulness in the past. It's a bit of a buzzword right now. Everywhere you go, it's all about mindfulness. You know, psychologists have got their mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. There's mindfulness-based stress therapy. There's acceptance and commitment therapy. There's mindfulness in different religious modalities. There's Buddhist mindfulness. There's stuff that comes out from yoga. There's bastardized versions of mindfulness. There's mindfulness for business. There's people who talk about mindfulness as a thing. There's people who are from one spiritual tradition who say you shouldn't practice mindfulness because it comes from another spiritual tradition. There's people in other spiritual traditions who say mindfulness belongs only with us because it began with us all those years ago. Blah, 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 blah. The research on mindfulness actually isn't as great as everyone thinks it is. There's some really good meta-reviews out there. Posner and colleagues, they did a great analysis of some of the literature in recent times, just showing that mindfulness is useful and good, but we just have to tread warily. People hop on bandwagons and they talk about stuff all the time. Now, I'm saying tread warily, and I'm a big advocate of mindfulness. But I think you'll find that there is mindfulness and there is mindfulness. You see, there's mindfulness as a mindset and there's mindfulness as a contemplative practice. They're not the same, but they're closely related. Helen Langer talks about this, about the social cognitive mindfulness. And I would argue that mindfulness is a human state of being and is therefore not the domain of any one philosophy or any one religious affiliation. I think that people are in error when they start drawing lines like that. I think that they've made fundamentally flawed assumptions about what stuff is and where it comes from. I think that mindfulness is just a human way of being, of observing the world. It is therefore the domain of every human. So every human can flourish and thrive as a result of being mindful and living mindfully and exercising mindfulness contemplative practices. Another issue that I observe in the mindfulness world is that people, especially in certain traditions I'm involved with, they tend to say that all contemplative practices or all meditation practices are the same, but there is evidence out there that shows that the type of mindfulness practice affects the brain in different ways. So doing a gratitude meditation will affect your capacity to handle life differently to doing a contemplative body scan type mindfulness practice. So one will impact your ability to be optimistic, but it won't impact your ability to handle anxiety and stress necessarily. So when a person comes to me and they say, I tried mindfulness, it didn't work, or it made things worse, I unpack with them the idea that, well, I want to know what you mean by mindfulness first. I want to know how regularly you practiced it. I want to know how you were guided through it. I want to know whether it was just a body scan, whether it was observing your thoughts objectively, whether it was meditating on gratefulness, whether it was compassion, kindness, meditation on yourself, inside yourself, because all of these things have different neurological and physiological effects on the person, different psychological impacts. They're not one and the same. Just because it's labelled mindfulness doesn't mean it is. And just because it's labelled mindfulness doesn't mean it's the right kind of mindfulness for you. That's really important. Trauma victims will benefit from a different kind of mindfulness to high-end executives who have no trauma history but are just running around being stressed, or to contemplatives who are living in a monastery. They have different reasons for engaging in mindfulness practices and will seek after and find different benefits and maybe lack of benefits. So mindfulness, I don't think, has to be the domain of any one person or any one religion or philosophy. I think that it can be a state of being for any human to experience and flourish and thrive through. And I think that we have to be very wary of saying that any meditation or mindful or contemplative practice is the same as every other one and has the same benefits. Things like heart rate variability will be impacted differently through different kinds of meditation. right? So if you are engaging more cognitive processes, then your heart rate variability is probably going to go down lower. So if your goal with mindfulness is to get the same benefits as HRV, as increasing your HRV, then you need to make sure you're practicing the right kind of meditation practice. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we can unpack there, and I don't know. We'll see. I'm doing more research and reading in this area all the time, and it's just amazing what's out there. And it's amazing when we see things with a mindful mindset. We look at it through a different view, a different perspective, which is a very mindful thing to do. We can start to see things a little bit differently. So mindfulness is really great. You need to tread warily, and don't just think that it's good for you because it has the word mindfulness attached to it. And don't just think that it's bad for you because it has the word mindfulness attached to it. And don't assume that it's negative spiritually or anything just because it has mindfulness attached to it. You've got to unpack it. It's much deeper than that. Life is complex. Humans are complex. Psychology and physiology are so complex. We need to tread carefully. Yes, we need simplicity, but simplicity is simply complexity distilled. So let's understand the complexity of it first. Let's differentiate it down and then apply that in a simple way that promotes the most thoroughly flourishing, thriving experience for people. That's all I've got to waffle about today with mindfulness. I hope you found it engaging. Feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you did. Even if you didn't, this is me, mindfully of course, signing off.